This time, we know that the Chinese government has requested that its carriers cease accepting Boeing aircraft deliveries for the time being. Yes, we certainly are. Well, we did start out a little better than we had hoped, especially with our commercial deliveries. Yes, we did deliver 130 aircraft. For Boeing, everything changed. All new Boeing deliveries were immediately stopped by China Southern, Air China, Eastern, and Air China, the country's three largest carriers. Why? Because Chinese goods were subject to a startling 145% tariff imposed by the U.S. Beijing retaliated by imposing 125% taxes on U.S. aerospace goods. The reprisal wasn't merely symbolic, it was a surgical procedure. Boeing unexpectedly found roughly 50 aircraft in limbo, after relying on China for 10% to 15% of its global orders. These weren't merely possible transactions. Geopolitics had crippled these active contracts. Once a representation of American industrial pride, the aircraft manufacturer was witnessing the sudden disappearance of its second-largest overseas market. This was no longer about rivalry. The message was unmistakable. Beijing will use trade as a weapon if Washington does. Boeing is caught in the crossfire as well. A business that was founded on international demand and interconnected supply chains is currently being harmed by the very regulations that were meant to safeguard it. This serves as a wake-up call. If the titan of American aerospace, Boeing, cannot withstand U.S. protectionism, then who can? Furthermore, grounded jets weren't the only thing damaged. Plane back. As a result of the protectionist environment, they have actually ceased accepting aircraft deliveries. This year, we intend to send about 50 aircraft into China. Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg thus stated that dozens of deliveries were formally canceled following China's freeze. A gut strike to a business that is already struggling. Boeing has been rushing to find new buyers and divert aircraft intended for Chinese airlines to other markets as a result of planes becoming stranded in storage, but it's not as simple as flipping a switch. Rerouting airplanes is a time-consuming and expensive procedure in aviation, particularly when demand is already uncertain. In the meantime, producing those jets has become much more expensive. Prices for essential resources like aluminum and specialty steel have increased by up to 40% annually as a result of tariffs. That is a devastating blow to margins for a business that is still getting over the 737 MAX issue. You cannot continue to bear the expenses indefinitely, nor can you increase rates without losing additional clients. Indeed, Boeing delivered 45 aircraft in April, about twice as many as it did the previous year. The catch is this: they didn't all travel to China. That quiet has a lot to say. What's left then? A trio of dangers. Reduced sales, increased expenses, and strain on the supply chain. Boeing production workers were expected to finish their 2 weeks of paid time off this week, and the rest of the industry begins to raise the same question when a multinational corporation like Boeing begins to falter under that weight. Who is next if Boeing is this weak? With U.S. production prices skyrocketing and orders from China stalling, Boeing has no intention of waiting for Washington to resolve the issue. It's in motion already. And complete strategies, not just pieces. Boeing has committed $17.5 million to sustainable aviation fuel initiatives in Canada. However, insiders claim that this goes beyond climate R&D. It's a beachhead. In addition to green tech incentives, Ottawa provided a long-term military contract and stable trade terms. Boeing states unequivocally that it cannot be found at home. The business is located in a government-run aerospace park in Malaysia with tax-free status, maintenance facilities, and reasonably priced skilled personnel. Boeing's U.S. plants are no longer able to compete with this type of package. Not with prices skyrocketing due to tariffs and political unrest. Next up is Germany. Boeing now has quicker access to EU customers thanks to a new components hub in North Rhine-Westphalia, which also acts as a buffer against abrupt changes in U.S. policy. The situation is more dire back in the United States. There is currently an indefinite suspension of domestic assembly lines. This threatens 40,000 jobs as well as the larger network of engineers, transporters, caterers, and suppliers. It's written on the wall. Boeing has stopped placing bets on the colors red, white, and blue. It is a wager on stability, on nations that provide dependable trade, unambiguous regulations, and space for expansion. Because a new slogan that makes sense has now taken the place of Made in America. Although Boeing's aircraft fly the American flag, their crews are from all over the world. Russian titanium, French and German avionics and cockpit systems, and Chinese and Indian vertical fins. These are not extras that are optional. These are essential parts that cannot be replaced quickly, and many require years to certify. Here's the issue now. The global supply chain is becoming a minefield as a result of U.S. tariffs. The cost of producing each airplane has increased by millions of dollars due to duties on electronics and metals, some of which reach 50%. Boeing as well, it cannot price itself out of deals by simply passing those expenses on to customers. Cheap labor isn't the issue here. It concerns the viability of constructing an aircraft in 2025. The industry relies on years of engineering perfection and global parts cross-border transportation. Tariffing won't get you over that. An airplane cannot be concealed by a tariff, according to one analyst. We're bringing back the third airplane, and I believe we already have 2 of those back. They have really ceased accepting aircraft deliveries, because protectionism doesn't shield them when every wing wire and screw originates elsewhere. Instead, it depletes the supply chain. Not just engineers are impacted when Boeing reduces employment. Whole communities start to fall apart. Boeing's industrial pulse, Ever Washington, saw the layoff of over 160 employees in the first quarter of 2025. Another 220 jobs in North Charleston, South Carolina, vanished without a trace. These are more than simply spreadsheet figures. They are pension-eligible veterans, second-generation machinists, single parents, and families who have centered their entire existence on the prospect of steady employment and upward progress. Additionally, the repercussions are severe and far-reaching. Truck drivers who used to move parts on a daily basis are now idle. Hours are cut or contracts are terminated. For uniform suppliers, housekeeping staff, and cafeteria employees at manufacturing locations. Following Boeing's economic impact, the nearby towns are beginning to feel the effects. Lunch orders are declining for small eateries. Local banks are keeping an eye on the slight increase in mortgage delinquencies. Even school districts, some of which receive a large portion of their funding from taxes related to the aerospace industry, are anticipating financial deficits. It affects more than simply payrolls. It drains entire supply networks in a systemic way. Suppliers that had focused on sewer avionics, mounting landing gear castings, or precision wing spars are now dealing with a surge of canceled procurement orders in manufacturing centers like St. Louis and Kansas City. Whole shifts are being cut by some. Specialized technicians who have spent years training are being laid off by others. Additionally, the tiniest businesses which sometimes depend on a single Boeing contract are just closing. However, the intellectual exodus that is currently taking place is maybe the most ignored. Long regarded as a cornerstone of American aerospace innovation, Boeing is quietly moving its R&D operations overseas. The business in Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland inked a multi-million-dollar research and development agreement in early 2025, focusing on cutting-edge aircraft materials and environmentally friendly aviation technologies. Similar exploratory agreements are being considered in Germany and Canada, which provide accelerated regulatory clearances, government-backed research incentives, and predictable trade policies. There is more to this move than a simple logistical calculation. It conveys a message. Even Boeing, a longtime collaborator of universities like Purdue, Georgia Tech, and MIT, is signaling a wider decline in trust in America's industrial policy framework when it chooses to offshore its cutting-edge research. Saving money is not the only goal. In a world where U.S. labor and trade policies have become too unpredictable to plan around, it's about finding predictability. This is not a one-time move that we are seeing. It's a slow-motion exodus of engineering, ecosystems, intellectual capital, global leadership, and physical assets. Boeing does more than merely fly aircraft. It involves moving whole pillars of American aerospace power to more strategic, stable ground. And the question becomes more pressing when every lab line in employment discreetly moves overseas. Before the U.S. knows what it is losing, how many other industrial giants will follow? With precise timing and a diplomatic edge that is drawing attention in international markets, Airbus is stealthily taking the lead as Boeing retreats. China imposed a freeze on all new Boeing aircraft immediately following its order in April 2025. Air China Eastern and China Southern. Beijing's three main state-owned airlines quickly turned their attention, according to sources. Several carriers were reportedly in advanced negotiations to put a record-breaking order for up to Airbus aircraft by June